Nope.
Hello, dear listener. Since today is election day here in the States, I figured no story will scare us more than anticipating our next president. So, while we are all still here and the country is not up in flames, let's begin. Wait a second. I'm having some serious deja vu right now. It's probably because I did a very similar video 4 years ago, right before the 2016 election. That video is currently my most viewed on the channel. I gotta say, I did not see that coming, but I'm not complaining. I figured since 4 years have passed, and we're still clenching our buttholes over yet another high-stakes, world's about to implode into a state of anarchy and murder election, we would revisit the theme. So sit back, crack open a drink, and enjoy 4 more paranormal military stories. Number 1. I've only told this story to 3 people outside of the old military buddies who have similar stories to this experience. First, I need to set the scene. Tucked in a mountain valley in Baghlan, Afghanistan, is a place called Russian Hill. Tapa Gurgen is the best phonetic spelling of the local name. We just called it Tapa. Tapa is the only hill in this entire valley, and that is not by mistake. It is a burial mound that has existed since the time of Alexander the Great. Generations of locals have been buried here. This also includes the dead Russians from the failed invasion back in the 80s. Now, what did the American Special Operations do when they came to this valley? Level off the top and stick a combat outpost on top of it. So, this is where my story begins. I was a regular Army paratrooper attached to the Special Operations team that built the outpost. One of the roles of the regular Army guys was to watch the radios at night. We would always get weird babble on them in the middle of the night, but that could be written off as interference, though years as a radio operator for my team led me to think otherwise. I had that duty one night. Somewhere between 2:45 and 3 a.m., my shift ends and I walked down the hill to our little bathroom area. I'm doing my business in this little cinder block hut with a hole when I hear walking up the hill next to me. I, at first, think nothing of it. Probably just one of the local guards coming up for a shift change. But being in the middle of the night, and me being in a combat zone, I do listen and pay attention. I can hear the sound of gears rattling. I know for a fact that our locals don't wear gear with metallic buckles, or metallic boots for that matter. I've been on patrol with them multiple times, and they hang around the outpost. I know what they sound like when they move. This was not that. These were a heavy set of boot steps, like a soldier in combat gear. Now, not wanting to die on the throne, and the fact that I was one of the very few Americans at this outpost, I decided I probably needed to know who was going up the hill. So, I crack open the door and peeked outside. And holy hell bananas, there is someone on the hill. It happened to be a mostly full moon, and I had some decent ambient light. They were carrying an AK-47, so whoever this was not American. They also had on a uniform, and not the typical Afghan garb. At this point, they are close to the top of the hill, and this person is not someone from the outpost. I grab my rifle and pop out the door, and I run up the hill after them. But when I got to the top, not a single person was around. I walk over to the building where the radio guard is and knock on the door. My buddy answers it and asks me what's up. I checked with them to see if anyone else was up there or came into the building, and he said that no one had come up out of the barracks. I ended up just bumming a cigarette and laughing about what just happened. The next day, while eating lunch, we joked about it. One of these special ops guys who had been there longer than us told us it was the resident Russian ghost. He claimed the ghost began to appear after they used dirt from the hill to fill our sandbags for the wall. Turns out they found some bones while doing it. He even told us that he had been face to face with the ghost and even drew his sidearm. All the other guys kind of chimed in about their own creepy stories of the place. I got moved to another outpost a few weeks later, but I always got a super creepy feeling whenever we would visit there. Number 2. This happened almost a year ago, and I didn't even remember it until now. This was my first experience with the paranormal. I was assigned to be the night watch of one of my barracks for that one night. The barracks we used were USSR-era wooden houses that were built from the 1950s to the 1960s. At first, the night was like any other night watch that I would have done. The military police paid me a visit during their nightly sweep of the area like they always do. However, after 2 hours of nothing, I started to hear random knocks on the big glass window at the end of my barracks. I thought it was my friends from the military police just trying to mess with me. After some time, I decided to go and check to see who was making the sound. I found nothing, but at least the knocking stopped. About 10 minutes passed, and I hear faint echoes that sound like footsteps from that same direction. I didn't have a direct line of sight there, so at first, I thought it was some other soldier going out to have a leak. A few seconds pass, and I can still hear footsteps, but I realize that the only toilets that are there are next to me on my left, and the sounds are coming from my right. So I decided to sit in my chair and wait. As the steps started to get louder and closer, I realized that I didn't hear any door creak open. At this point, I'm really starting to panic, since I knew it wasn't any other soldier. I point my flashlight towards the corner and decide I would leap around it to see who was there. But when I did, I couldn't see anyone. I went back to sit in my chair and tried to get my shit together. A few minutes pass, and once again, I hear a loud bang from that same window at the end of the house. This time, I almost ran to check it out. As I got closer and closer, I saw something glint on the floor right under that large window. It was a very small puddle of water, and the air around it was insanely cold for a moment. I did not hear or see anything else that night, but during the next few days, I'm almost 100% certain I saw some misty shadow figures near the edges of my peripheral vision. I'm thankful that nothing followed me home after my service ended. Number 3. I was in the armed forces in my younger years, and my first duty location was in Okinawa, Japan. I was stationed in Kodina and was living in the barracks. We all had our own room there, but each room was linked to one another through a shared bathroom. You can lock the door to your room using the bathroom door for added security. Anyway, my pissmate was a tall black dude. For the sake of the story, we'll call him B. I was asleep one night, and I awoke with a feeling of someone watching me. I looked near the foot of my bed, and I see what appears to be a dark figure. I was super groggy, and possibly hungover, but I remember saying, "B, get the hell out of my room, weirdo," and proceeded to fall right back asleep. I awoke the next morning and went through my routine for work when I realized my bathroom door was still locked from my side. Weird. I decide to brush it off and eventually go find B so I can ask him about the night prior. I talked to his lead and was told that B was on TDY for about 2 weeks and has been gone for a couple of days now. For you non-military folks, TDY is an abbreviation for temporary duty travel. It essentially means that B was on a business trip this whole time. I have never felt the same in my room since that night, and I've only told a few people this story since it happened. Okinawa is extremely haunted since there was so much history during WW2 and before. I told B about it when he got back, and he laughed at me, saying that perhaps I was the weirdo. I also don't remember any weird feelings when that figure was at the end of my bed, except for that weird feeling of being watched, which is what woke me up in the first place. Number 4. The following is a collection of different paranormal experiences I've had in various military areas during my deployment. Fort Sill in Oklahoma. I was there for basic training. Every night, we took turns doing, quote, fire guard. It's basically where 2 soldiers rotate every hour to watch the door and make sure everyone stays in bed. There were 4 barracks bays. Ours, the female bay, was upstairs and across the hall from a male bay, but we used separate stairwells. Us females and drill sergeants were the only ones using the center stairwell. The drill sergeants would come up to check on us periodically. The doors were heavy and loud. We would be able to clearly hear when they went into the bay across the hall. So every now and then we would hear footsteps come all the way to the top of the stairs and stop. Neither of the doors would open, and we'd never hear them go back down. We even heard objects rolling down the stairs. You could hear them hitting every individual step as they went down. It was so scary. After lights out, everyone had to stay in bed. We had to let the fire guard know if we were getting up to go to the bathroom, and no showering was allowed at that time. There were times where we would hear people talking in the bathroom in the middle of the night, and sometimes hear the showers going. We would go and look because we all would get in trouble if anyone was up and making noise, but no one was there. I should also mention that the lights are all motion sensed. So we would walk in and the lights would turn on, meaning a physical person had not been in that bathroom for at least a few minutes. Our beds were in rows all lined up. One night, we all got woken up by a scream right next to our row of beds. We all sat up at the same time, freaking out and looking around at each other. We couldn't figure out where the scream came from. Fort Pickett in Virginia. This was in 2019, during our annual summer training. We were in the field, which is basically like camping in tents. There was a large open field where the medical tent was, and then our personal tents were back in the tree line. There were a few nights where people were woken up by something shaking their tents, whispering their names, or just vivid nightmares. Some even saw figures standing outside their tents. Some people had dreams where they woke up only to be in another dream. I was with another sergeant in a 2-person tent, far off to the edge of the group. One night, I heard footsteps all around our tent, almost circling it, as if a whole platoon was walking past us, very slowly. But our medical area was so far away from all the other training areas, and as far as I knew, nobody was out training at 2 in the morning that night. Non-paranormal side note, the place was infested with spiders. When we first got there, we went into the woods to set up our sleeping tents, and within 5 minutes, there were 6 spiders crawling on my pant leg. Definitely not my favorite place for annual training. The final location is Fort Indian Town Gap in Pennsylvania. My ex used to tell me, while he was sleeping, that he saw a man or figures standing next to the bed or in the corners of the room. He often saw a man with a mustache. I don't know who it could have been, but anyway, fast forward to another annual training. We had some free time one day, and most of us decided to go back and take naps in our barracks. The girl in the bunk next to me was asleep for about an hour when she woke up and asked me if she had been screaming. I said, "No, you didn't say anything the whole time, you were just asleep." She said she had just had sleep paralysis and thought she was awake. In her, quote, awake dream, she was in the same barracks with the rest of us, but we were all staring at her. That part was creepy enough, but the part that got me was that she said there was a man with a mustache standing next to my bunk. He was bent over and was the only person looking at me instead of her. This woman was a complete skeptic on the paranormal, and even if she wasn't, I had never told her about the things that my ex had seen. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, you know what to do. I need you to absolutely empty your magazine into that like button. Let it know who's boss. Just a quick self-plug. If tomorrow comes and goes and the country is still intact, celebrate by visiting the new Nope Too Creepy apparel shop at nopetooCreepy.com. You'll find a selection of shirts, hoodies, and tank tops to choose from to help embrace your spooky side, and you'll be supporting the channel in the process. Link in the description. On a serious note, if you live in the US, hopefully by now you either casted your vote or are making plans to do so before it's too late. They say we should hope for the best and prepare for the worst. I believe that to be true, but no matter who is elected, I hope you remain calm and have faith in the various checks and balances that keep this country running. United we stand, divided we fall. Right? Until next time, remember to stay safe out there. I'll be seeing you in the next video.